Before we look at the specific costing methodologies that are common and the ones that are trending, we will just take a quick overview as how this entire process actually unfolds in a hospital. So the hospital costing mechanism generally involves several steps that is associated with providing the healthcare services. And let's break it down. The first thing is actually what the hospitals do is that they begin by identifying all the activity centers. So the activity centers could be the OPD, the intensive care units, the IPD, the operating rooms, the diagnostic centers, and all of the other activity areas, whether it's the emergency room and the others. And then they start collecting data on the services each of these activity centers provide. So this data gathering will include details like patient visits, average number of procedures, tests, and outline the assessment and load in terms of what it is as far as the services that are associated with these activity centers. And then what they do is they start assigning costs. And the first thing is capital costs. So for each of these centers, you will then look at what are the investments in infrastructure, in equipment and facilities. And hospitals can also consider expenses related to building construction, medical equipment and technology, which are part of the capital costs associated with each one of these activity centers that we just went through. The hospitals will then look at other fixed and recurrent costs, which include labor costs, which includes the doctors, the nurses, the administrative staff, the time it takes for them at each of their activity center, whether it's in registration and billing, performing an endoscopy, etc., and what are the supplies, what are the utilities, and all the other maintenance that go with actually providing these services, and the costs associated which are recurrent in each of these centers, whether they're both direct and indirect, and all of this is then allocated. So some of these costs are indirect, and all of this is then allocated to each of these service centers. We will see later that the indirect cost allocation is faulty generally because financial analysts tend to use what is known as a peanut butter method, where they just kind of randomly allocate indirect costs across departments, sometimes causing issues in terms of operational efficiencies, and we will look at that later. And then all of this is then aggregated, taking into consideration the scale of the operation, the complexity of operation, whether it's primary, secondary, tertiary, the geography, how is the hospital positioned. So you interlock A, B, and what we just mentioned, the scale, geography, and positioning to arrive at the total costs. And it is this entire exercise that helps them build a reasonable costing mechanism. And this costing is crucial for business planning. It's crucial for budgeting, and definitely to be able to evolve a pricing mechanism that is fair. But what we will see is that most of the time costing is not done scientifically, if at all they are even performed. And we will see in the section on pricing, where we will see that there's barely any linkage between costing and pricing, let alone with outcomes. Let us now briefly review each of the costing methodologies that are currently being used by hospitals, and I will also recommend the particular methodology that I think is most suitable for the hospital, but not used as pervasively. Let's get into specific costing methodologies next.